Hello, I'm Ben Greenaway from B Medical. Today I'm going to be introducing you to the new Pegaso E7C. So we've switched the device on with the touchscreen button. If you're running on battery, which I am here, I'll immediately press the battery warning mode to silence that it's running on the battery. So as you'll see from this device, we've got a much bigger touch screen compared to the previous model. We've also got the option of an optional foot pedal and a range of connectivity options with USB, USB-C, SD card for downloads, and the option of connecting a foot pedal as well to make it easier for solo operation. We offer now the cough assist modes are accessed within the cough assist menu, percussive mode. We have an air stacking mode. We've got the option of having up to 8 different patients or therapies set. If I go back to the home screen, we've also got in the cough assist mode large waveform display to make it easier to titrate your settings. At any stage, you press the home button to get back to the start. If using manual, we use the rocker switch for the inspiratory and the expiratory. To set something, I just select the thing and take it up or down, the parameter I'm adjusting. If we switch the device on, we press the button. And I use the rocker switch for the inspiratory and the expiratory. I've also got oscillations switched on. And I can choose with the oscillations whether they're inspiratory, expiratory, or both. And I can set the amplitude and the frequency. And then I'll just pause it. I have the option to save whatever timing from the inspiratory and expiratory manual cough into the patient's memory. So I can choose to add it to a setting. If I go back into the cough assist mode, into the automatic mode. In automatic mode, I have the option of setting an inspiratory trigger. If we have no trigger, then it is purely the patient is following the inspiratory and the expiratory time and the pause. If I put a trigger on, the patient can trigger the inspiratory part of the breath, and if I select the eye cough, they can select the expiratory when they'll cycle to exhalation to make it more comfortable and easier for the device to follow the patient. On the triggering, 1 is the most sensitive. The higher you go is the least sensitive. For any of these parameters, I just select the parameter and then use the up or the down arrows to do it. I also now, unlike the previous version, have the option of setting the number of cycles and the number of coughs the patient's going to do and the number of pre-therapy breaths. And then we have a graphical display above. So if I switch off my pre-therapy breaths, it'll change the graphical display, and these pre-therapy pressures and settings disappear. So in this case, I've got 30 centimeters of water pressure for the breath. Inspiratory is 2 seconds and a pause of 2.3 seconds between each breath. If I now take you through all the different parameters that's possible to set, this is the mode selection. So automatic means it's either going to be following the patient's breathing or the timing is set by the device. Ramp is we ramp up the pre-therapy breaths. If I have no pre-therapy breath set, the ramp disappears, or even 1, because it's going straight to that pre-therapy breath. Rise time is how fast the pressure switches from inhalation to exhalation. Oscillations, we can choose whether we have oscillations on the inspiratory cycle, the expiratory cycle. We can set the amplitude and the frequency of those oscillations. Inspiratory trigger is the patient's triggering the breath. If I switch this off, it becomes purely a timed device with the patient following the timing you've set here of the inspiratory time, the expiratory time, and the pause. If I set the inspiratory trigger on, then the patient will trigger the breath. 1 is the most sensitive, the higher the number, the least sensitive, and they will receive this breath, in this case, for 2.5 seconds in, 1.8 seconds out, and then a pause of 0.6 seconds. If we also activate the eye cough, then the patient can also trigger and cycle to exhalation. Here we set the number of cycles we want. We might want a patient to go through 2 or 3 cough cycles. We set the number of coughs within each cycle, and we can decide whether the device finishes on an inspiratory or an expiratory breath, depending what you want for the patient. So I've left it on inspiratory. We can also set a number of pre-therapy breaths to hyperinflate or to help inflate the lungs prior to therapy. In this case, I've got 3 pre-therapy breaths, 30 centimeters of pressure. Each breath is 2 seconds and a pause of 2.3 seconds with each breath. Here we have our inspiratory pressure, our expiratory pressure, our time on inspiration, which if ICOF is set becomes the maximum time for inspiration, time on exhalation or expiration, and then the pause between each breath. If it's a patient-triggered cough, we want a pause of at least 0.4 or 0.5 of a second to stop the device auto-triggering after we've sucked air out of the patient. So at any stage, to get back to the home screen, we just press the home button. So if we now look at the parameters within the percussor mode, within the percussor mode, we have 3 parameters we can set. We have pressure. In this case, I'll set it to 25. We have frequency. I'm going to set to 180, so that's 3 times a second. And then we have the inspired to expired ratio. And in this example, it's 2 to 1. So each pulse, 3 times a second, is going in twice as slowly as it comes out again, giving a net expiratory bias to the airflow, which helps move mucus from the periphery to larger airways of the lungs where it can be coughed out. So on the new Pegaso E7C, we've also got the option of programming modes for patients. So this could either be for a number of different patients, or you could have a well or an unwell setting program. To access any of these program modes, simply select it. It gives you a summary of what they are. So in this case, we've got percussion first and followed by the assisted cough. To use any of these modes, we simply press the play button next to it and then start as normal. Because this device isn't on a patient, it's not really showing any pressure on this graphical display, and I can pause it here and then hit save. I can then go to the cough assist mode, again start that cough assist mode, and we can see the line graphically moving through what the cycle is. If we press this mode change button, it just switches you between the cough assist and the percussion, so you can simply move between the 2 program modes. Within the assisted cough mode, we have a waveform display, which can be activated by pressing this waveform display. Here we have pressure and flow, and with the option of adjusting the time scale. So there's 10, 15, 20 seconds. We can pause a screen, and we can also press this button so that the waves are filled in to make it easier to see. In this example, you can see the pressure spike on inhalation, drop on exhalation, and you can see the flow. Where this can be useful is if the airways, upper airways close, then it may look like you're getting good pressures, but if we're getting no flow, then you'd know the upper airways closed. On the Pegaso E7C, we also have an air stacking mode. Here we can set the tidal volume, the inspiratory time, and the trigger sensitivity. So if I drop my trigger sensitivity down, and it will be started as with the other modes by pressing play or pause. We have the option of putting an SpO2 sensor. We use a Massimo probe from the side of the device, and here we can set a range of alarms for the patient. If I briefly look in the settings, again, they're all accessed by the touch screen. We have the option of changing it between clinical mode and patient mode. That's now in patient mode. To switch it back to clinical, I have to hold it for a few seconds. We can set the brightness. We can also change the screen color. We can look at therapy logger to see what the patient's history has been. We can download that to an external computer program. To switch the device off, hold down that button and then we press the shutdown button on the screen. The circuit setup remains the same as the previous model of the Pegaso. We have bacterial filter, usually place this down by the machine, so if any material is coughed into the circuit, it can be cleaned. The circuit should be washed after every use, and the bacterial filter is generally changed every week. If you are concerned about a patient exhaling into the atmosphere with particulates, we can put another filter between the mask and the exhalation port. Here is the exhalation port. It's open for the percussor mode and closed for the cough assist mode. Thank you for listening. I hope you're as excited about the new Pegaso E7C as we are. Please reach out if you'd like us to organise a quote or arrange a trial of the device or a demo.